All right. 6 p.m. Let's get it started. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. My name is Zeno Temple. I'm the founder and executive director of the Just Us Movement. The Just Us Movement is a social justice organization. We're an access to justice organization, and June marks Juneteenth, which is commemorating the delayed emancipation of enslaved people in the United States and honoring generations of Black resistance, resilience, and community leadership. Yet, more than 150 years later, systemic legal barriers continue to impede and limit our racial equity. This webinar will explore how reparative justice efforts and community-led advocacy can be used to confront ongoing racial justice. And Juneteenth is both a celebration of freedom and also a reminder of the deferred discriminatory laws, policies, and systems that we have in place and have had over the history. The 13th Amendment, while abolishing slavery, contains exceptions, which continues to shape the radicalization of incarceration and economic inequality. Federal civil rights protections, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, remain essential tools for challenging discrimination in housing, employment, and education, and also in public life. So we thought it was really important that we put together this webinar and put together this conversation to kind of touch on the history and the importance of Juneteenth, some of the things that we can see in our communities, and some of the strides that we can make. And today I'm just super excited for our speaker, Mr. James H. Lightfoot III. I would just like to introduce him and have him come in and talk about himself a little bit and just, let him know who you are. Let them all know who you are.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. Zeno, I'm James Lightfoot III, as he shared. Local, I guess I can call myself a community leader, but advocate for youth, and educator, really just looking to create opportunities for young people wherever I go, and just be a model, for them to see what opportunities are before them. As you all may have seen in some documents, I'm the Director of Education and Youth Development for the Urban League of Springfield. I also serve on a few boards here locally, really just being an advocate for youth, proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but engaged with a group of men who are out doing some very magnificent work in the Springfield community and throughout the nation. And so I hope through our conversation this evening, you get to hear a little bit more about me, my perspective on this very important topic. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and thank you for being here. I mean, you spoke a little bit about being a community leader and being local to the Springfield area. And I guess before we dive more into Juneteenth and the importance of the work behind that, could you tell us a little bit about your journey growing up in Detroit and now how it's helped you kind of serve the communities in Springfield?
So originally from Detroit, Michigan, born and raised. And as I was thinking about that question, like how did that experience shape me to being who I am? I was unknowingly always involved in community service or in some aspect of giving back to the community. I always tell folks I grew up at the YMCA of Metropolitan Detroit. It has some very good, strong role models there who showed me the way how to be, appropriate young man, give back to my community, not always looking, to get something back for the service I did. But I also account who I am from my father. He's a Detroit Police Department. He was a police officer for the Detroit Police Department. And so he kind of gave me some perspective. Probably got to see the city much differently than other young people growing up, learning about where I should and shouldn't be, but also learning the importance of community, looking out for one another, and just having a good support system. I'll say, my community helped mold me, the neighborhoods I grew up in, and also the networks I developed over time. So I had uncles and aunts who were part of Detroit Police Department. I had family who, not blood family, but, those family that you acquire through growing up, who helped provide me some history lessons, kind of knowing what I should be doing throughout life so that I'm prepared for whatever that I'll encounter as I grew up. So that network through education, through the community, really helped kind of form my understanding and value of giving back to the community and being involved. And I really look for that now wherever I go, and look to create those opportunities for all the people I work with, young or old. Like find your community, find that support system, so that you have a kind of well-rounded experience, full life. And in your position, you're in a position to do many things with that.
So
And
I think that leads. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that led perfectly into our next
yeah.
topic, just on like that network and those people that surround you, that village, right? Why is that so important for, younger students today, especially younger Black students today, and how can they kind of use those to get ahead?
Yeah, like you need that village to really progress, right? And none of us are out here doing what we do on our own, by no means, right? And so I think having that village, having that community support helps guide you along the way, help remove any barriers you may experience, and being able to teach you, how to, lick your wounds if you encounter any challenges. Just building that resilience in you. And, I think that network really provides you the education you need as you navigate the world, right? Whether it be, injustice activities, if it's in your education, you're really just trying to find your way. In the work I do, like helping young people find their career paths, helping them understand what it really takes to get to that, that place they want to be. And that network and community, that village is what helped guide me there. I think for young people today, they need that, right? Whether it's given to them or they seek it out on their own. We countervent the village with, mentors, right? And so having mentorship in your life, having some good mentors, again, whether you go out and find them yourselves or, you attain them through programs or the like, it's important that you have that.
Absolutely. And I guess thinking about it in their shoes, right? In the young people that you serve, what kind of lessons or even pieces of advice that you would give to someone early in their life, early in their career, kind of looking for leadership or advocacy guidance?
Well, I think it starts with knowing or identifying like who you are or who you want to be, and then maybe seeking out like-minded individuals, or I was like finding a mentor. And some people may be like against that, opposed, like I don't need anybody to tell me what to do, but you need to find someone who can provide you that guidance, that support, someone who's going to keep you like motivated. I think that's key, right? So finding like that identity, finding your voice,
Mhm.
uh, understanding those things that you're passionate about, so that you can, start to build a map for yourself, right? Find a pathway that you can go down and really form into that person you want to be, right? And start looking at different types of leadership styles. I often share a story about a mentor I had that played like a key role in my life. And this comes from like just watching people. While I was a kid at the YMCA, Mark Owens, shout out. I see him walking around the Y all the time, just walking, walking. I'm like, man, this guy is the executive director. Why is he never doing work? I always see him walking. But I realized at that point, like as he was walking and moving, he was learning what the needs were of the community. And so in observing that, I took some walks with him, just kind of figure out like, what are you doing here? Say, well, I get to talk to the members. I get to see where, there may be challenges or areas, that the organization could thrive in, or things that need repair. He says, so I can't do that from my desk. I have to get up and walk. And I've
Mhm.
shared that bit of information with, other leaders that I've been around and young people. Like sometimes you can't sit and wait for the opportunities to come to you. Sometimes you got to get up and walk to them, and you'll find the way. The organizations and boards and opportunities that I've been graced to have. Like I didn't sit and wait, for the phone to ring. I got up and got after him. So that's one of the lessons I think, young people should, have and understand, right? You can't wait for it to come to you. You got to get up and go get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I mean, to learn early too, because we have to take our opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess switching gears a little bit and going into, the theme of this webinar and of June, right? Juneteenth.
Mhm.
I talked a little bit earlier about how the Juneteenth commemorates the freedom and finally reaching enslaved people, the information finally reaching enslaved people of their freedom in Texas. So when you hear the phrase freedom deferred, what does that mean to you personally?
I sit with that one, because anything deferred for me feels like a little oppression, right? Someone trying to keep something from you because they know that value. that may come with it. And so as I think of like that freedom deferred, I think about, someone withholding my liberties or trying to keep me away from the opportunities that are before me. And, as we may understand, looking at this historical holiday that we celebrate, like it was known what would happen if that freedom was granted or when that freedom was granted. And I think even today, we're experiencing some of this deferred freedom, if you will, or obstacles being put in the way of us really, getting to that. So uh, I think it's, I hear stilling or feel stilling opportunities, the oppression that comes with, keeping you away from what could be, you being able to, access the resources or have power or do all the things that, you're developed or created to do when I hear that, right? So uh, when thinking about that deferred, freedom deferred, I thought about the Langston Hughes poem Harlem, right? What happens to a dream deferred, right? And so you think about what happens to freedom deferred. Well, we see all the things that have come about over time, the injustices against our people and, all people when they withhold you, from reaching your full potential or getting full access to the things that may be available to you.
Thank you for that. I mean, that's right on the ball for me. I mean, I thought the same thing. Like it's so important that we have our opportunities and we know about our opportunities. And I think a big piece of that is like educating youth on our opportunities. And I think it was really a big piece of our history when we started treating Juneteenth as an historical holiday. And that way that we're educating our youth and we're taking time to commemorate it for a reason to get eyes on it, get ears on it, get hearts on it. So, in your opinion, or why do you think that Juneteenth should be viewed more as just a historical holiday?
It's a moment in history, but it's something that has so much traction throughout our lived experience, right? And as I say, we constantly are under some form of oppression or injustice in this world. So if we're only highlighting it one day, like we should be celebrating, we're a step closer every day, every month, right? And I dislike the idea of like we celebrate things in kind of thematic months when the issues are ongoing, right? And so, like, a question to our audience, or those listening is like, have we gotten our freedom, right? And, I know we're not no longer enslaved by the accounts of what was happening back in the 1800s, but we think about all the challenges and barriers that are before us, right? And there's some levels of oppression that we're continuously fighting for in this current day and age. So I think it shouldn't just be limited to like this one day. Appreciate the acknowledgement, and I know that the importance of it, so I don't want to undersell that. We have this moment in time to reflect, which is important, right? But it shouldn't be limited to this one moment in time where our people should always be in celebration, in unity together, in the jubilation of understanding that we're continuing to do this work to really get our full freedom as a people and, all folks who are being oppressed. Yeah, that's kind of where I would say that. So it should be limited to like just a holiday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of turn into education, right?
Yeah.
And your background and your kind of skill set in education a bit. And I recently had the pleasure to attend the oratorical where you coached up some young men to present and talk about
Mm,
education and talk about why education is the most powerful tool
mm.
or powerful piece of form of resistance, right? And you spent most of your career helping young people reach their potential. Do you see education as one of those most powerful tools of liberation, even?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, free the mind. Right. And so the more you know, the more tools you have, or weapons, I'll even say, right? The more weapons you have to fight against, I keep saying it, right? The oppression, right? That's put before you, or to knock down the barriers that are put in your way. Education, and not just like book education, right? But the lived experience, you being able to engage with folks of different, I keep saying folks, that's my Midwestern thing, but like people of different backgrounds, of different classes and ethnicities, uh, you being able to engage on that level, right, really helps kind of fully form like what your education and knowledge base should be over time, right? And so, yeah, it is the biggest, weapon against, right, or to help you attain that liberation. And we shouldn't, as I tell the young people, right, don't limit it to a book. I mean, I know what the background says, right? But I
Mhm.
think, that community, as I was speaking of in my introduction, is so important to your development as a human, as a intellectual, right? We can read so much in a book, but it's really the lessons we learn from one another that helps us break down the barriers and get closer to, I would say, what our idea of freedom is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I had an experience this past year where I went to Alabama and Georgia, and we
Mm.
kind of took a bus civil rights tour, like a bus tour around the states. And I got to see firsthand about like the history and get that rich culture and hear from people who were fighting in the civil rights movement, like on feet on the ground, like you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like really there. I wish I had that experience when I was younger, but I kind of go back and forth with myself, like would I have appreciated it or not, like as much as I do now. How
Yeah.
do we kind of get our youth and our children kind of more connected to our history in the sense of, bringing them closer to it's not just a book, but it's a lived experience, it's a life.
Just what you said, right? We have to get them out of the classrooms and have them walk the block, if you will, right? To understand the many stories that exist throughout generations. I was just working on a project with, a group of our senior volunteers here at the Urban League, and uh, really trying to figure out how we pass down those stories, right? Those ones that we miss that are not going to be printed in a
Mm,
history book ever, right? And thinking about like how we pass those stories down, how we share the knowledge so that they're aware of one, where they come from, right? So helping to form that self-identity, the power they have within them based on other people's experiences, and just giving them a guide, as they move through life. I think often when we talk about the history, it's a moment in time. It's
yeah.
something that happened way back then, but then we're starting to see those things repeat themselves, especially, as adults. They're like, this is not new, right?
Mhm.
This someone is just, carbon copy what has happened to see if it's going to work again. And so it's important for us to share these stories, talk to young people, take those walks, so that they're aware and educated on, the things that are not in the books. So I think that that's one way, right? Everything is not going
Yeah.
to be in the books that they read, talking to the grandparents, talking to the other family members, finding folks within their community that may have a background or some information that they may not be aware of. I think that's so important, to kind of help them understand where we've come from and where we're going.
Absolutely. And I think like the work that you've done with the Urban League, and I want to pivot to that a little bit,
Yeah.
and the 100 Mails to College initiative
Mm,
that you've
yeah.
done, you're just creating opportunities, right? We're not losing recipes, we're sending them down the line,
Yep.
right? So, what kind of barriers do you most see often in those kind of settings or in our communities, and how can we address them pro adequately?
I'll say 2 points, right? Not enough people willing to stand in that gap, right? Step up and create these opportunities, meet these young people where they are, to share the information. Not discounting, like there's some out there, right? But not enough to the point where we're like having the impact, which is why programs like 100 Miles to College exist, right? Just to think of that, like we're trying to get young men to college, right? But we understand the barriers that exist in that, right? No hope, no examples in the community. They hear all the bad that comes with getting an education, right? Or it's not cool. It's not an overnight success. So it's really making sure that we have, excuse me, examples in the communities that show them like what they can be, right? Establishing that hope, like you can do this. The only thing standing in your way is you. Often, I talk to young men who have the opportunity to attend the Black College Tour every year, and they come back with their minds, wide open, and I'm like, you live in a city where there's like, 6 or 7 colleges at your,
Yeah.
reach. But they go to that Black college and it's an eye-opening experience. They get to see a campus full of folks that look like them. They feel that sense of community. They know that they're going to get similar food to where they get at home. But it's also a place where I think they feel the impact they can have on the world, right? And they know that folks who've done that have traveled those roads or stood on those campuses, and they see the excellence,
Yeah.
right, all around them. And so that being able to create those opportunities and for them to be able to see people in their community that exemplify that positions them, to be great,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about my experience recently, earlier this year. Joel, who's the vice president of
Mm,
the Just Us movement, he held a web or a workshop at the National or the Northeast Black Law Students Association
mm,
conference, and it was a brother to brother conversation, and it was all black men, all black law students, black lawyers, but it was just like black men, right? And you talked about like that having a group of excellence in one room, right? And you kind of look around and like, wow, this is the most like black lawyers, black men lawyers I've ever like been around in my
yeah.
life. And so when you create kind of groups like that, you create opportunities like that and rooms like that, it really means something. And I kind of wanted to segue into your male initiative for leadership and education
Yeah.
program and kind of talk about what inspired that and kind of what did it teach you about mentorship and what did it teach the young folks in it?
Yeah, it is. I'm happy you brought that up. So it goes to this point like when you see something is needed, right? Or you see a gap, you're like, man, how can I fill this? And so the Mel Initiative for Leadership and Education, or MILE, came about. It was a similar program happening at Springfield Technical Community College that served the Black and Latino students, the male students. Um, but majority were student athletes. And so I looked at that, I was like, well, there's a whole other population of students that are missing this opportunity. So let's see how we can broaden the scope
Mhm.
of this, rebrand it to something that's, reachable. You think of a mile, right? No one's out just running a mile, right? It's like an experience and a journey, and it's something that you're intentionally like trying to accomplish. And so in your mind, you're like, man, what's going to be catchy? What's going to get them, connected to it? But it really was birthed out of like filling a need there. Like the Black and Latino male students at the time were not transitioning on or staying in, like the retention was low on them. They were not completing their programs at the same rate as their other counterparts, male counterparts and female counterparts. So I was like, what can we do to really help them? And it was really, they didn't have a space, or they didn't feel like they were getting the attention or the hug, that they needed on campus. Academically, they were doing okay. So it's like finding a space where they could feel appreciated. They can get the support they needed as they work towards completing their academic program. And they had some good modeling ahead of them so that they could really identify and strengthen that self-identity, but also that pathway that they're going down. So, you think about when you enter college, you may have known what you wanted to do, or you were testing the water. And so being able to be in front of others who've gone before you to speak about their career path, to share in like, some tips, right, to overcome some of those barriers is what I created through that. And so they got to meet with professionals throughout the community, some of the members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, um, those who like even out of state are utilizing access to technology, doing some virtual meetings, so
Mhm.
that they're able to connect with the opportunities or people, that may be exposing them to some new ideas. And so that's how that came about. It's still going on at the college. So, be able to create something that withstands, your time, and it just continues to grow. And so the component with that was getting them off campus also. So a lot of the work, you want to make sure that they're being good students, but you also want to create space where they are able to engage with the world, see what opportunities are out there before them, so
Yeah.
that once they graduate, they're already connected, so
Yeah.
they can go out into the streets and see a Joel or a Zeno and say, I'm James Lightfoot, good to meet you. Remember me from that meeting? And you've like already built that network and village for them, to be supported and be successful.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important piece to touch on, like those roles, right? Those roles that representation play in these young people's lives. From your own
Yeah.
experience and probably some feedback that you've gotten from those young people, what do those roles mean? Like, what do they look like? Why is it important to have people who look like us in leadership roles?
Because you often don't see it, right? And so you don't know what you can be until you see someone, right, like you in the role who could speak your language or share that commonality with you. And I share this often. So I didn't meet my first veterinarian like face to face until I moved to Springfield. The great Dr. Bruce Cutting here, he's a retired veterinarian, also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But I grew up wanting to be a veterinarian because I loved animals. I'd never met a veterinarian. I'd never like had any contact with them, but I'd never seen a black veterinarian, but like somewhere in my mind, I was like, I want to do this. But I think had I had that model early on, I could have talked with him. I could have picked his brain. He could have understood, like, oh, you from Detroit, so you have these things that make you up, maybe have these experiences, not to like create a profile of me that say I may not attain this, but really understanding my background so I could be prepared for what challenges may lie ahead of me. Um, so I use that example. Like if you're going after something, right? Try to find someone that is doing the work, right?
Hmm.
To get that mentor or get that role model in the work. And they can really share with you like what challenges you may experience being who you are, right?
Yeah.
Or understand your background. I met my first actuary, didn't know what that was here in Springfield. And
Numbers.
a black actuary at that. So it's like seeing people in position, you may learn more about, different industries and pathways. They're able to share with you from a different lens and perspective, what possibilities are out there for you. And you have a model, right? And I think that's what it really boils down to. Like you see someone who looks like you, who talks like you, it gives you that hope, right?
Yeah.
None of us had ever seen a black president, right? Eloquent, like just had it together. And then it's like, oh, and all you have to be, what's the age? Like 39? Or, it's a low age. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, James may be able to step, and he's a community organizer,
Yeah.
right? He wants to speak for the people and show up. Seeing that gave you hope, right? And you see someone, you're like, oh, this is an opportunity for me because now I see someone who's like me, right? Who has already set up a place or a marker that I could potentially walk into. And so seeing individuals like that who look like you gives you that hope to like, I can do anything. I'll say excellence, right? The Black excellence in Springfield community, in Massachusetts as a whole. I know brothers who are out in, the Boston area who are doing some phenomenal work. And they're just great leaders, right? It kind of, they exemplify that excellence that you want to be. And until you see that and experience
Hmm.
it, you really don't know it exists.
Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
Exactly. I think I want to pivot to as you talked about background and interests. You have a passion about community theater and the arts, right? So how can the creativity become a form of resistance and empowerment as well?
You have to tell the story
Yeah.
somehow, some way. There's no better way to do that, I think, than through the arts. And kind of side note how I got into it, right? I think I did my first play in third grade. So at the age of 9. And it was one of those things where my parents encouraged that, right? I was thinking I was one of those kids that was not diagnosed with ADHD, like a lot of energy, right? And so you have to figure out how to find that. But I later learned how important it is to like tell the stories, have people experience what life fully, what life is. And so through the arts, you can draw it, you can create it with your hands, to tell the stories. You can put it in a poem, write it in a play. dance it out, right? Learn to tap dance. Very, very fond, passion for tap dancing. So it's like utilizing the arts to one, like to show people your experiences or share the stories. Music does the same thing. All these things are storytelling mechanisms. And so
Hmm.
I, I think it's important that we find ways to communicate and share the experiences by any means. Um, Arts are the most powerful way to get that message out. I mean, you can put it in a book, right? But then you have to use some artistic, creative mechanism inside of you to really paint the pictures, right? And experience the storyline, walk down those roads, feel those stories, feel all the emotion that, an author may put into a writing. But I think in a visual form, right, in a movie, I keep, the arts are so plentiful. Not sure if I shared this, like, so my master's thesis was on the art of community development. I'm sorry, the art of youth development from a community lens. And so the importance of like engaging art and integrating it in all we do, from how we dress, right? To how we make ourselves up, the food that we cook, like all this is experience. Just to kind of wrap that up, like it's all about the
Hmm.
experience and how you share messages and stories. And it's so important that, we utilize that to resist, like remove those barriers, right? And
Hmm.
people are always trying to keep us from sharing the good word or communicating it, what needs to be communicated, right? We'll take all the books off the shelves. Okay, we'll make music. Oh, we're going to ban the music. Okay, let's find a way. Let's do it through poetry. Up,
Yeah.
the poetry is, making the youth or people act out. All right, let's find another way. Right. We'll find some artistic expression to get the message delivered so we don't lose it. Right.
I really like this train of thought, and I want to kind of expand upon it
Yeah.
because I don't
Yeah.
want you to wrap it up just yet. I want you to expand upon it a little bit.
Yeah.
What role kind of does the storytelling and the cultural expression play in preserving the history, right? And building the stronger community?
It creates a thread, I think, if I'm understanding that right. So it
Hmm.
creates this way for us to hold on to those values in the history, right? And expand on them as we go. I, if this is not too far off the direction you're looking to go, it's like we learn dance, right? You learn a dance and it stays connected with you, right? But then when you learn the history of it, right, and why it exists, right, you then pass that on,
Hmm.
right? And so then that never dies because now you're transitioning this practice, over time. And then if someone comes in and add a step to it, right? You're then only building on what the story means. And I think, as I'm sharing like that power of storytelling, right? It empowers you to keep it going. You don't want to lose it. You want to transfer this information to the next generation so it continues to live on. And I think that's how our history, why it's still so relevant today, right? There may have been some stories that, we're starting to lose because those generations are transitioning, but it's going to be upon us and it is upon us to like keep them moving forward. So whether it be through a dance or a recipe, as you alluded to, we don't have recipe books, but like I think that's an intentional way of like trying to remove that story, right? And that
Yeah.
message
Yeah.
from future generations. So it's like we really have to tap into those things that our ancestors and use to keep empowering one another, keep sharing the stories and information so that
Hmm.
we can keep moving.
Yeah.
And the arts does that, right? I not to go off tangent too much, but I think about like when I learned to tap dance, right? I seen Savion Glover in concert, and I was like, man, this is amazing. But then like really learning like history and where that came from, and the resistance and empowerment that comes from that art form. Um, Bringing a Noise, Bringing a Funk. If you ever seen that, it's old show that he put on, but it kind of timeline the story of how tap dancing came to be and how we
Hmm.
as a people sent messages almost like Morse code through, through these movements, understanding that and how we as a people are able to like carry the stories on and use different modes of communication to keep our history going is one way. I'm like, it's something that stuck with me. Like this one way I know I have to keep the message going, keep this history
Hmm.
alive, share it with everyone I come in contact with, right? So that we're better for, and we're empowered to then find our own forms of expression and storytelling so that future generations can benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this central theme of like sharing and empowering, especially with the future
It's
generation, is truly important. I want to kind of hear from your point of view as a father and a parent ambassador of the advice that you can give families and young parents that are coming up into, raising future leaders. What advice can you, or what can they do to support their children into being empowered or being and believing in themselves who probably don't have all the confidence in the world starting out.
I have to say this with like, you have to be very kind of smart in how you do what I'm going to say, right? But expose them to things. Understand what you're exposing them to and what may come from that. But don't be afraid to get them out into the world to see different things, tell the stories, right? Even those that may be a little, I mean, use
Yeah.
your brain. But tell those stories, share the information that they need when they're age appropriate. Expose them to the world as you see fit through their development so that they're not blinded or surprised when they do experiences. And I'm happy you, you shared it. Like I learned about Juneteenth very late in life, right? I mean, probably much like a lot of folks where you're like, oh, this happened and what this is. But it's like making sure that they have the necessary information early on so that they're not walking into the world blindly. Don't be afraid to not know, right? But use those opportunities to find out information that may be beneficial. Have conversation with other parents. I'll say as a parent ambassador, that's the number one thing that I'm trying to share with other parents. Is like talk with other parents, right? You can't learn anything from someone who doesn't have children, right? They're going to give you some advice that sounds good, but they don't have the lived experience to really tell you those little things that, a doctor's office can't tell you. The doctor's using some theory and like, yeah, you could try this, but like someone with some lived experience will be able to sit you down, say, hey, bro, as a father, like try this, right? Or be patient. Really, don't jump to a conclusion. Really listen to or analyze the situation that, you're being confronted with so that you can have the right response. Before parenthood, this is one of those things that, if you're looking to become a parent, like really communicating with your partner so that you know the expectations, right? Both of you are on the same level. You're going to be a team, so make sure that you both have the same, you're in alignment, right? Have the same perspective on how you want to do this, so that you're prepared to meet that challenge as you move into it. And then as a father, I've like, oof, I tell other fathers like, be patient, bro. Like, be patient because there are a lot of things that you'll experience that you can be very reactive to and not take a minute to stop and think. And then, I talk to if you're fortunate to have a father, like talk to your father, right? But like, what did you do in this situation, right? Or what would you have done, you know, if times were different? Would be some advice I would share, with families. Read. Look, my list is about to get longer as I'm thinking about it, right? Read to your children. Everything, the newspaper, the children's books. If you find some good, good songs, I'm a Motown kid, so like you find the lyrics to a good song, like sing those, right? Or say them to them, right? You build up this muscle here where they're able to like learn to comprehend or understand different language, right? And then you build the love for reading and knowledge within them from an early age. I'm a huge supporter of literacy. If anyone's ever heard about First of All We Read, that's something that I was like very passionate about, making sure that you're getting in front of young people, however, whatever means, to read a book to them or hear someone reading a book,
Mhm.
to gather the power of language and the power of voice, and that storytelling, as I was sharing.
Absolutely. And I like the way that you kind of brought everyone into it, there with that
Yeah.
recommendations. And I think from what I was going to go to next is for everyone watching who probably wants to honor Juneteenth beyond watching this webinar. What are kind of, I'm going to give you three, right, concrete
Three.
actions
All
that
right.
they can take tomorrow.
If you don't know about Juneteenth and it's like the full story, like read about it, right? And then so read about it. Why you said three, right? You can read or do some research. Tell someone else, right, about why Juneteenth is so important. And then I would say attend an event that will be going on in your community. And if most of you or our viewers are mostly Western Mass Central, there are a lot of events that are taking place next week that they can participate in. Northampton, Springfield, I'm sure out east in Boston, there are a number of events going on as well. But there will be three concrete things I think they can do. But most importantly, like getting educated. Don't just be out there saying like, "Oh, it's the day they got their freedom," and then leave it at that. Like really getting a true understanding of like what this moment meant and how, and how we just, just started this off, right? That deferred freedom, like how for years this community was unaware that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. And so they're like thinking we're still in this thing. So get educated, share the information with someone else, and then support or attend an event that's happening in your community so that this time next year, right, or on what June 20th, right, you're still doing the work. You're not just waiting for the next year to make it happen, but now you're starting to live and embody what that moment meant, and you're helping to remove other barriers that may exist because someone out there right now, sorry, it's probably not what you asked here, but someone out there now, freedom is being deferred because they have not been made aware of some opportunity or access they have. It's out there waiting on them. They may have to get up and go and get it as opposed to waiting for it to arrive.
Absolutely. And thank you so
Yeah.
much for that. I agree fully 100% with those three. Entertain me for a second. If we were having
Yeah.
this conversation 5 years from now, what progress would you hope that have been made happen? Or what progress do you hope was made in 5 years from now?
Overall,
Related to this conversation. Related to this conversation.
whew, that we are not having this. I would say I will hope that we're not having this conversation in the same way, right?
Mhm.
We've made such progress that I guess that idea of freedom, and it would take another, six conversations for us to really look at what that is. But I think 5 years now, we're steps closer to all the things that we've been fighting for or talking about, for many years. The injustices that have been kind of routine in our experiences are gone. The models and purposes that come with Juneteenth, that like celebration and, unity, right? It's just our practice. It's no longer waited for, Juneteenth and Kwanzaa, but it's like it's just something that we're doing off the strength of we know we need each other, we need community, right? And we've come together to really make these efforts our everyday act.
That's amazing. And I think before we open it up to kind of having a Q&A and have the audience kind of chime in and ask their questions, if every young person listening to tonight's session remember just one sentence from this conversation, what would you want that sentence to be?
Hmm. Walk it out. No, don't wait for things to come to you. Get up and go get it, right? And I think I could go into a long story, but like, I don't think and many of our ancestors waited, right? Things
Mhm.
happen, to kind of move things into action. But, as a young person in this day and age, you can't wait for that opportunity to land in your lap. You have to get out there and get it.
Thank you so much. I mean, before we
Yeah.
kind of wrap up, I want to
You
open it up to the audience to see if anyone else had any questions, comments, concerns, anyone wanted to raise anything.
raise anything, but wanted to say that James did a nice job. Great hearing your perspective and the things that you accomplished. So very, very proud of you as well. I think there's so many things in our history about being deferred. There's so many things we have to wait for that you just get tired. And like, well, why do I have to do that? Why is it this way? And I think there are points in time where I'll just say this, our graciousness or foolishness, time is about up for that. It's really, as someone said, we're in a third Reconstruction period, which is it's just tragic because in this moment there are people actively trying to make things challenging. For what reason? What are you that concerned about? So I think as I look now I'm not quite a senior citizen, but I'm close. I'm getting there. That not a revolutionary, but I definitely don't think that we need to continue to accept less than what any person is due. We teach those things, you got to be twice as good to be good. Those are things that I was taught. I think those are things we tell people now. And what we need to say is, no, you need to represent who you are and expect that you will be treated appropriately and be very comfortable asserting that you expect to be treated appropriately, not threatening, just a matter of as any person on this planet, you expect the same rights, privileges as anyone else. And I think, at this point in time, that's what we need to be teaching our children. We need to teach our children own your own business. I came through the generation of, oh, go to school, get a good job. I can remember my grandmother's, why are you leaving your job? Well, grandmother's a promotion. Well, you better keep the job. Because of where they came from, I understood that no, that's not what I'm going to do, but I understand why you're telling me that because you want me to stay employed. We got to teach our kids differently. The world's different. Brothers, I'm coming back to the workforce. This whole AI thing, man, like, we
Yeah.
got to teach different skills. We got to teach different ways of thinking.
Yes. I 100% agree with that. And we have to make sure that they have the models before them to attain that. So they walk in there with the right skill set. So what you're saying is like teaching them differently, having them be true to self, right? But they have so many models of folks who are like folding to the pressure of what,
Sure.
others' expectations are that they don't have enough folks who are preparing them to step out there, be bold, be assertive, appropriate, like not, I say appropriately assertive, but not going in there and like trying to take the company over, but saying like, this is who I am. These are my values. This is what I bring to you. And if that's not what you're looking for, thank you. I'm taking my services elsewhere, right? And a lot of our students, I don't think, are being empowered to think that way or practice that way. They're taught to be more submissive. Like, oh, if this is all you have for me, then I guess this is what I have to take, versus really understanding their true value,
Mhm.
and what they can bring to a space. So, but no, thank you for sharing that. This is not my interview, but yeah.
It's all good. And,
Absolutely.
and, and not to turn this into an alpha thing, but think about our founders and what they did at that time. So the capacity of humans, particularly humans of color, to make a difference is amazing. And we just need to reinforce that ingenuity versus, get along to go along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was you guys are killing it. I mean, I was really excited to have the conversation. I think that's exactly what we hold these forums for, to have these conversations and to open up the mindset of everybody in attendance. And I just can't say it a better way. Like we need to have and empower our younger people because I was just having conversations with, not only like my little, but also with the mentee that I was helping out for the oratorical. Like having those conversations is like, why? Like, what does this mean? Like, why do we care about this like that? And then like him like, having his mind open, like, oh shoot, like this happened throughout time, you know? I'll pass it off to I saw it to Shai's hand first.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say thank you to you all for sharing all of your insight and everything. I'm a parent of, a 3-year-old little boy. And so for me, I think a lot about how I present this world to him. So I really appreciated your sentiments about how we as parents can support our young children, especially our young Black boys.
Yeah.
Because, I'm fortunate enough to have gone to law school and I had him while I was in law school. So that's kind of who he's surrounded with. He's surrounded with really, really good role models and some strong men around him that have, experiences. But I really appreciated, the sentiments you shared about where we can expose them and how to do that and the best way to set them up for success. So I just wanted to, express my gratitude for that.
Thanks, Shai. Joel.
Hello, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. This discussion has been just extremely informative. I had one question, just kind of piggybacking on what Tashai said, and also some things that you mentioned. When I look at the grand scheme of things, so we want to essentially like provide our community with information that's going to be beneficial for them so they can kind of progress. How do you navigate through gatekeeping or people or internal forces, I'll say, within our community that do a great job of hindering the ultimate goal for the grand masses? So if I were to present an example, like you mentioned, Barack Obama, like when I see him speak, I'm like, wow, I'm inspired. I believe I could do like anything. Like I could be a president too. But in the same sense, if you look at the Supreme Court, there's another person who's similar in, race and characteristic, but he's doing a lot more to harm the community. So how do you navigate through some internal forces that kind of do a job of gatekeeping progress and act more as bad examples of what little kids or little children should look up to rather than positive, even though they look just like, a little Black boy or, little child? How do you navigate that extra hurdle?
Yeah, that's a good question, Joel. I think I became aware of things later in life, and maybe these things have been mentioned to me early on and I missed them, but discernment, right? And I think I was trying to search for that word earlier when I was talking about, reading to your children and engaging them. But it's having discernment and really teaching, right? Or making or helping young people or anyone aware of that, yeah, may be the same hue, right? But your perspectives and interests may vary, right?
Mhm.
And really being aware of how you finding that support or that those commonalities, right, beyond, the book cover or the face value of saying like, are they really talking the way I talk or right? Talking about the things that I'm passionate about? Are they really helping us progress, right? Or the issues that I'm interested in progress forward? And I'll say that's how I personally navigate through the world, right? I can meet someone and be like, oh, you have that in common, right? Your ethnic background, your skin color. But then you really have to discern, like, are they really about the business, right? Or do we share that thing in common that we're both passionate about? And then that's how you then engage and build that network, right? And then you have a clear mind on how you may work with them or say, right, this may be someone who's an opponent of mine or may not be moving in the same direction I'm in, right? And you need to keep them around just so that you're aware of how you need to navigate and move because you're going to learn something from them in that process as well.
And I think with that, as we come to 7 p.m., I just want to thank you so much, Mr. Lightfoot, for joining us today and just sharing your wealth and spreading a wealth of information and knowledge amongst us all tonight. And amongst everybody, I would just love to give you a round of applause, a virtual round of applause, of course, for everybody else in the audience, but thank you so much. And for the Just Us movement, we just want to thank you and just say for everybody else in the audience that we have a lot of programming on our website, on our social medias at the Just Us movement. Please tune in. We have other educational kind of programming surrounding or like this program tonight. We have one later in the month talking about federal protections among LGBTQIA plus communities, and we will have the director of GLAD come in and talk to us about those. We have so many more things in store. We look to feed the community in the future, so please, please, please go and keep up with us. Join our newsletter, just follow along. And thank you again to Mr. James Lightfoot. And the rest of you, everyone else, thank you so much for attending. Please be in attendance to the rest of them. Thank you so much and have a good night and be safe.